Welcome back to New to Medical Device Sales. I am your host, Jacob McLaughlin, and today, you guys, I know I say this a lot that I'm like, oh, I'm excited to bring you guys a guest, but today is I just can't even put in words how excited I am to have our guest here today because I've literally got to watch her change, her grow, her become this new person with new goals and just new life over the last several months. And it's been the most rewarding, and it reminds me why I started this and why we're doing it. And so today I'm going to be bringing you guys a former speech language pathologist who was able to break in with one of the largest medical device companies in the world, and she's 37 years old. So for everybody who's like, "Oh, you can't do it if you beat it over 30," like, today we have Jennifer McCarron on, and she is an absolute rock star. She was in the course. Like I said, I watched her grow from somebody who was like, "Hey, I don't know if I can do this," to just somebody by the end of it was like, "Here we go, beat out people." And by the end of it, I had people from that company messaging me saying, "Do you know this girl? Because she's talked to everyone on my team, and our regional manager loved them, and like we heard about her." And so, Jen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. That was quite an introduction.
They will hear how much I enjoy being with you and like just seeing your growth, and we'll get into that conversation. But
For sure.
I just want to say welcome to the show, and I would love if you can. I know I mentioned a little bit, but do you want to just give a quick little background about who you are?
Yeah, sure. So I've been a speech language pathologist for 13 years. I worked in the medical setting for all of those, and in the hospital, I was in a trauma one hospital setting the last 7 of those years. I'm in the Chicago area, and I used to do traveling therapy, so I've kind of been all over, but Chicago is home. But yeah, I was ready for something new, and I crossed paths with you, thankfully. And in a short time, it's my whole life has changed for the better.
I love it. I love it. Well, number one thing I want to say is it's been fun because we've had the opportunity to get so many speech language pathologists, PTs, OTs, nurses. Everyone's breaking in, everyone's reaching out to me because they want. And again, you're one of the people they usually will call because you've lived that life. And again, going
Yeah.
into a trauma one, because you're in Chicago, right? If
Yeah.
you guys don't know anything about Chicago, they usually have some pretty busy hospitals, especially at a trauma one. And so,
Very.
while you were there, what was kind of the moment? Because again, from my experience has been, you know, the hours, the capped pay, how much you can make, the progression in your career. What
Yeah.
was kind of the moment for you that you were like, what else is out there? Maybe I should start looking at something else. And maybe what were the reasons for that?
Yeah. That's a really good question. And I think for me, my biggest goal and my biggest dream career wise when I graduated was to work at the largest trauma one hospital in Chicago. And, after 6.5 years of being a speech pathologist, I was able to accomplish that. And then I ended up being there for about 7 years. And then I ended up getting jobs at other local, like university medical centers and other trauma one hospitals. And after doing that for the next 6.5, 7 years, it was kind of the same grind all the time. And I just felt like, yes, in that job, there is a lot of critical thinking and that challenging stuff, but a lot of the same critical thinking every day. And I just felt very stuck. I felt like, I just couldn't imagine myself doing that for the next how many other years that were left in my career. And I was just really ready for some growth, some change, where something where I could see myself having that growth and advancement. Because I just felt like in this box where, okay, this is what my life's going to be every day I go into work. Like there, I needed something different. And I think for me, I did my job for 13 years, and I knew like that's a good amount of time. I feel like where either if you can continue or like you need to really make a change. So
Yeah.
that's where all that kind of came out of.
I love that. And the one thing I wanted to ask, because this has been something that's come up, and I know you've answered these questions, is especially for nurses. This has
Yeah.
been a comment, especially like trauma, and they always talk about what's the stress going to be like, what's the difference going to be like. We'll still continue to get into your story, but I did
Yeah.
want to just like message or go into that message of from the stress that you were facing in a trauma one hospital, because I can imagine it was a
Yeah.
stressful life.
And I feel like don't get me wrong, there is stress in my job now day to day, but it's a different type of stress. It's more stress that has to do with like, okay, how am I gonna organize my day? How am I gonna prioritize? And like communicating and kind of, the typical stress that I feel like is very easy to deal with. The stress that I dealt with at my job in the hospitals and that I see nurses deal with all the time, their staffing shortages, or they get floated to a unit where they're not even going to be trained on. And they're expected to, and then you're doing that day in and day out with these grueling hours. And, at the end of the day, you know, unfortunately, I just feel like a lot of healthcare, there's a lot of that getting burnt out from lack of like people seeing that and how it really does wear on them. So I feel like there is stress, but it's a different type of stress and a stress that I think is manageable for sure.
Love it, and like I always say, majority of the time when you're not in in medical device sales compared to what division you go into, so that always matters. Like with you,
Yes.
you're dealing with like serious injuries and possibly even close to death at that point, right? Compared to in your job now, you're usually not dealing with that, right? So that can
Yeah.
change that stress level a little bit.
Yeah. No, definitely. A lot more like critical decisions and like a lot of stuff was like more put on my shoulders. I felt like with decisions I had to make with like some of the patients and stuff like that for sure.
Yeah, because I always just say this. Like I had a couple nurses ask me this, and that's why I'm just going into detail on
Yeah.
this one, is because this is a common question that comes up. But I'm like, the most stress that you're going to have is like, did somebody respond to your email or did you make some money today, right? Like, and again, like, don't get me wrong, like money, like that is stressful, but like it's not someone dying. It's not someone screaming at you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a different kind of stress, a little more manageable. And again, if you're doing the right things, usually you can handle that. But no, so I love that. And then I want to just know, like, so what made you start thinking, like, well, maybe medical device sales is it? What got you interested in about medical device sales, and like, how did you even find out about it?
When I was a contract or traveling therapist. I worked in California and there was another physical therapist there. She was a contract physical therapist at the time. And we always kept in touch. And then years later, I had noticed that she had left physical therapy and she became a clinical specialist. So I kind of had always seen like that, transition from being in the therapy world to medical device. And that kind of stayed in the back of my head. And then probably within the last 2 years, I started like playing around with it a little bit more. And then I was just on like LinkedIn and looking around and, I came across your page and then looked more into like the podcasts and all that stuff. And I think for me, and I know a lot of therapists, physical, occupational, speech, and potentially even nurses. It's like our degrees are so specialized, and so it's really hard. Like you kind of get like, oh, where can I transition? And a lot of people think, oh, you can only stay in, the therapy world in a different setting,
Yep.
or as a nurse, but in a different setting. But
Yep.
being aware that in medical device sales, like that's not the case was just awesome to see. And so that's how I kind of came across that.
Yeah, and so and I wanna just make clear real quick because you are this, a lot of people, so a lot of nurses, SLP, OTs, physical therapy, they look at the clinical specialist or they'll reach out and they'll ask what the clinical specialist, and a lot of you guys don't even know, so hopefully this is educational for you guys, is because a lot of times they look at medical device sales and they don't wanna get into it because of sales. They're like, "I don't
Yeah.
think I'm a s" the no most common one thing I hear is, "I don't think I'm very salesy," or, "I'm not a salesperson," right? Which
Yeah.
you are, because you sold yourself to get a job, you sold yourself to your friends, like, it goes beyond that, but again, I totally respect that, and so I tell them about, "Hey, did you know about a clinical specialist?" Which is actually kinda between, like, an ASR and a full line sales rep role. You're usually gonna get paid more. It's kind of a step up, but you're also working with the rep and you're kind of getting in that territory. Can you kind of just go in really quick, just a quick overview of what a clinical specialist is? Because this is
Yeah.
where we push, like for me, I've gotten so many OTs, SLPs, PTs, nurses in the clinical specialist role to where they can come make more than they're making as a nurse or an OT or a PT or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
can be in that six figures right away, but they're not doing sales as much as they are just working with the patient.
And I think it's actually a really good place for people in those allied professions to transition over because the critical thinking that you're using within your, PT, OT speech nurse, you are doing the same thing. So like my day to day, I deal with a lot of troubleshooting, some technical things. So in my division, I do have to do some installations or repairs on the systems. But that's, honestly, that's stuff that's very doable for anyone. And then when I'm doing case coverage, um, that I feel like is a lot of that critical thinking piece where, the doctor's like looking to you as a specialist. Okay, like can you walk me through? How do I use this? And, it's like you're building those relationships up with the doctors and the nurses and all those things that you do day to day anyhow.
Yep.
And it's a really nice transition, and you do in services and you really grow that relationship with the staff. And sometimes they see you, this clinical specialist, as more of an ally with them
Same.
than some of the sales reps, because they know that you're kind of just there, supporting and not selling per se, in a way.
Exactly, because you don't have a quote unquote quota. Now, the one thing I
Yeah.
will say is like most people, like I have talked to clinical specialists, they don't might not have a financial quota, but they might be like, hey, you need to get 15 patients or 15 new patients, which again, when I say that to anybody, like go talk to 2 doctors, you can do that, no problem, because you're already in
Yeah.
those cases, right? So it's not hard. But to that point, I just want to say this because I hear this all the time, especially from nurses, funny enough, that you'll say that where you're like, oh, you're the specialist, and they're like, oh my God, like, no, that sounds too stressful. And I'm like, you're already doing that, but like with 18 different products already,
Yeah.
you are you're right. So it's like they don't get themselves out of that mindset. And again, because you are the product specialist, and to your point though, is you don't have a quota. So the nurses and the other people are like, oh, Jen's just here to help. She's
Yeah.
here literally just to help us out and make sure the case goes well. She's not trying to upsell. So it's easier for you. I don't want to say easier, but it's a nicer transition, like you said, to
Yeah.
compared to like sometimes I walked in and I would say something that's truly here to help somebody, but some nurse who doesn't understand it will be like, it's no selling in the OR. And I'm like, I'm not like, this is something that would help. Right. So
Yeah. That
I just,
hesitance is not really there as much.
no, exactly. And that's what I wanted to just hit on. So I love that we were able to go into that detail. Now you did the course
Yeah.
and you had success. And I want to touch on a couple things in the course of what I just saw with your growth. But I wanted to ask, when you did the course, what do you feel like was the most helpful for you in the course to go from when you started to landing a job with the largest company?
Networking, 100%.
Yep.
Relationship building, 100 million%. Without that, like it's going to be nearly impossible to even get, like, that's what the whole job's about. It's
Yep.
building relationships. And without doing that, I can guarantee you, if I didn't do any of that, I wouldn't be sitting here talking with you.
No, and you did a great job. And that's what we would talk about in the course is being able to coach you on those things. Because I just remember the Jen I met when you first got into the course to the Jen you are now. It's a new person. And I just want to share this and I hope it's okay. It's like I
Yeah.
remember we got on one pivotal phone call. And I still remember the moment I was walking right over there, and I remember talking to you like it was yesterday. And it was at a point where you just had some life happen to you, and we were able just to have a real good talk. And it was, I literally on that phone call watch your mindset shift. And literally in 2 weeks, you went from being like, hey, I'm kind of trying to figure this out, don't really know because I'm having some tough life, to 2 weeks later, you're like, I'm a killer, I'm in it, and you're getting calls from the top companies in the world. And I
Yeah.
just wanted to like kind of touch on that because for me, like that's where like people just think the course is just like a bunch of videos and modules. And I always just make sure that they know like I'm here for you guys because when you invest in me, I
Yeah.
invest in you. And I just wanted to share that because you are the reason, like I can sit here and say this, and I want to say it on the podcast, is you are the reason I started all this. Is someone like yourself being able to watch your growth, being able to know that you just changed your life and your family's life, and to see that you're so much happier, to see that you're like on this new journey in life, like that's what gets me out of bed and gets me so excited. And so I just wanted to touch on that because it's been so much fun to just watch your growth over the last couple of months through that course and to where you're at now.
Yeah. And, if, be, when I started the course, I was going through some things at home. My dad was sick. He was on hospice, but that was kind of, he was on it for a while. So in my mind, knew that wasn't something that I even thought about. I was like, I want to make a change for myself. And then I think it was like a month into the course, he had passed away. And I kind of was at a point where I had let all my own goals for myself just like slip away in the middle of that. And I think I did like hit probably bottom, like just emotion. I was like, if I don't make a change here and now, then I'm going to be just as worse off as I was, emotionally with the last job and not have, that wanting the growth and all that, like, here's my chance, like, don't throw it away. And I think I really just needed to, just gather myself and take a minute. But honestly, I think more than anything, I used that as something that put a fire under me, because I think I could have used it another way where it's like, oh, an excuse, like, oh, this happened. So, this is why this is going to happen to you.
Yep.
But honestly, using like, life's going to happen to anyone. Things happen all the time. You can't control, some people, some things will be, worse than others and all that stuff, but it's still life. And, I think using that as a fire under me literally changed everything. And I never looked past, look back after that, because I just kept seeing these changes myself that I wasn't seeing initially, and then just seeing all these positive outcomes. And it was just that kind of, I think, chain of events that really lifted me to push me forward in the trajectory that I've been in.
Yeah, and you became it's been fun, like, it's why I say what I said, you became a new person, you are a new person, and it's
Yeah.
just to see who you are now, it's been great just to see that transformation. Now, the one question I did wanna ask when it came just to the course, and then again, we'll get off the course, is just what do you think was, like, the most beneficial, like, again, because we talk about the modules, but then we have the office hours, we have the
Yeah.
one-on-one coaching. What do you think was the part that, like, really helped you go from, if you didn't take this course, you wouldn't have known and you wouldn't have got out of it?
So, like, the modules were awesome, but I think being able to connect that information that I was learning with that, with other people within the course that were actually in the trenches going through it and being like, hey, I did this, this is, these are the questions I was asked, or, this call didn't go well, or, oh, this is how I moved on, just being able to talk with people, bounce ideas off. And then, like, you know, I got to be friends with some of the people within the course. We would kind of help each other out, doing like mock interviews, and just really like being put in those situations where, it's hard. Like, I've just seen like myself become a more confident person in
Yeah,
general. And I think I
100%.
didn't have that level of confidence beforehand. Like, I was confident in my job. I thought I was a confident person, but the things that you kind of have to do to break in and even be in the industry, you have to have a level of confidence, being in the OR when they're asked a question, all of these tough situations. And I think being able to kind of bounce ideas off and put each other in those situations to really grow in that way was just a interactions and training and stuff that I don't think I would have had or grown from without it.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you saying that, because that's been one of the biggest things we actually started adding ever since ever since in there, we have the mock interviews now to get people ready for when I went out against 500 people. Those aren't
Yeah.
easy. You gotta be ready, because like you just said, the whole thing about the course is we're not just trying to get you guys a job offer. We're trying to get you multiple job offers, but even beyond that, we're trying to get you set up to be prepared to go into the industry,
Yeah.
because it doesn't do any good to get the job and then not know what you're doing.
Yeah. And you can Google questions, you can Google all this stuff, you can go on YouTube, all things, but honestly, without really practicing it and like being in those situations, I can firsthand tell you that they don't they won't serve you. That
Yeah.
won't serve you to just do that. It's
I
not enough.
I appreciate that. No, it is the absolute truth. And so I know a lot of people are going to reach out to you and they're going to be like, Jen, I don't have sales experience, or hey, Jen, I'm an SLP, or I'm a nurse, or whatever it is, right? Or I do have
Yeah.
sales experience. What's the tips you're going to give to me? What would be the tips that you would say to those people? Because again, just so everyone's listening, Jen's very sweet and she is very nice, but Jen does not have time to get on 1,000 phone calls. And that's why I actually ask these questions, so it can be helpful, because we don't hide anything from you guys, because otherwise we have to get on 1,000 phone calls, which just can't. So what would you give that advice to those people?
I think first and foremost, being prepared is probably one of the most key things. So if you're going to go and talk with someone, know the company and like have questions prepared, or, have a line of like, hey, I'm trying to break in, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? But, being able to network, being able to reach out to people, you're going to have to put yourself out of that comfort level. There's no way around that. And I think just being patient, and not giving up on all of that, those are really important things. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear my
No,
dog
no, you're
snooping.
good. My dog's been whining the whole time. We are a dog-friendly podcast.
But honestly, you have to get out of your comfort zone. And I think, you know, you can reach out to people on LinkedIn. You may not hear back from some of them, but you will hear back from someone. And I think it literally just takes one person. And I think it's just building relationships and forming relationships with people that, you otherwise wouldn't have.
Yeah. No, it is you are 100%. So again, you guys rewind, go listen to that for the next 2 minutes, rewind it and listen to it to 4 times because again, you guys all want the secret sauce.
There's
We've given the secret sauce a million times,
yeah.
but it takes time, but what can help is when you know somebody who's done it with over 700 people and make it faster and get more offers and leverage. That can help. But to the point of what Jen's saying though is the keys, it's the same. It's the networking, it's building the relationship, knowing that it's going to take time. And I just want to share this story because I think this will be very beneficial to people. As I remember, I actually was in LA for one of my travel trips, and you texted me, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, this regional manager told me they were going to get back to me on Tuesday. It's Wednesday. I haven't heard from them. Like, what should I do?" And I remember I had to call you real quick. I remember being on the bus and call you, and I said, "Hey, like, I trust me. I know that because again, when we're in the moment, it's the most
Yeah.
important thing to us.
Yes.
But to them, it is the least important thing because they're running a territory, their stuff. And I remember just explaining, hey, I promise, give them if you don't hear back by next Monday or Tuesday, then follow back up because it was the end of the quarter. It was they are dealing with back orders. They are
Yeah.
also having a team of like 12 plus people and ASRs and all those that they have to handle. Plus, they were at a conference. I remember you telling me that. So
Yeah.
they hadn't been to conference since COVID. And so there's all that stuff. And like, so I remember telling you, I'm like, hey, they will get back to you, but just remember you're on the bottom of their list because the last thing they're worried about is talking to someone who's not even working for them yet
Yeah.
compared to it. And then I just remember, I think it was a day later you texted me with a big bunch of emojis and you're like, they got back to me. You were right. Thanks for talking to me. And I just wanted to share that to people who are listening because again, I want you guys to realize like, I know when you guys are going through it because I've been going through it and I've done it. It's even when I go now and I'm working on a sale. It's the most important thing to me. But to the people I'm talking to, it's not. And so you have to just understand to do the things the right way because again, I can tell you, I've actually had, and I just want to say this because I've had people, it just actually happened this month. I've had people message me and I don't respond for about 6 hours. And then they're like, thanks a lot for nothing. Or they'll send me these like passive aggressive messages. Well, number one, I can guarantee you, you will never get a message back. And if you do, it won't be
Yeah.
one that's like, hey, let me help you. Um, but number two, it's just like you guys have to understand, like, for example, like myself, I'm busy. Like I run a lot. Like I'm up at 4 a.m. I'm doing like today. It's been one of those days, right? And
Yeah.
again, that's just life. But just understand when you guys are reaching out to these people, if they don't get back to you right away, it doesn't mean they don't like you. First
No.
off, if they never get back to you, great. It's just like you just talked to a ghost because you never are gonna meet them. They're never gonna meet you. So who cares if they didn't respond? Number one. And number two, like give them time. And this, I just had this talk in our office hours in the course is, somebody was like, hey, I responded and they didn't reach back. How much should I reach back out? I'm like, keep reaching back out till they tell you to screw off and tell you not to come out. Don't do it.
100%.
Don't do it every week. Don't do it
Yeah.
every day, but every so often, send them a message. Say, hey, hope you're doing great. Make something personalized to them if you got to
Yep.
talk to them, and just continue to follow up because until they say no, it's a maybe, right? Because
Yeah.
and even if they say no, maybe it's a no right now, maybe not a no in 6 months, right? And so that's what people just don't understand is it's the same. I have to do this in sales, right? I just had somebody tell me no, but maybe in June. Okay, so
Yeah.
mark it on June. Here we go. But the reason I'm saying that is the amount of times you guys will message me and I literally will be on the phone and I'm like, oh, I better get back to them, or I'm literally mid type to someone and I get a call for work.
Yes.
Like just so you guys know, like I'm on over 100 calls a week. Like it minimum 100 calls a week. Like that's Monday through Friday. That's not even my weekends. So it's like the amount of times that I have to remember to go back, plus I'm running several businesses, plus I'm running territories, plus I'm talking and coaching our court. Like there's a lot and like there's priorities. And so if somebody doesn't get back to you or they like don't, it doesn't mean they hate you. Maybe they forgot.
Yeah.
Maybe they just were
Yeah.
typing and work came. And so that's why it's important to continue to follow up and just every time you do it, be really polite and be very respectful.
100%. And to your point, I think the follow-up is super important because I think even one of like the most like pivotal people that I had reached out to, I didn't hear back from him. And I was like, kind of like, you know, and it was part of the division I'm in now that I really wanted to work with. And I reached out to him again. I talked to another rep in Minnesota, and he's like, oh, try and reach out to him again. I reached out to him again. He's like, oh, sorry, I must have missed this. He's like, I'd love to hop on a call with you. And yeah, and it was
And
probably, you know, it's great to be so motivated to want to reach out and everything, but like what you're saying, you have to think like I think now being here, I can totally see like end of quarter, like the back orders, like there's a million things. And like you get a text and then you get a customer calling you, like there's an issue with something. And
we
then
doing fire drills all day long.
yeah, yeah. So there are just simple things that like, you know, so it's okay to reach out to people, but I think being mindful, like, hey, like if they don't get back to you right away, that's okay.
Well, because this is the thing, and we've already said it, but you think you're the most important, and you're not.
Yeah.
And this is where I've gotten passionate. I made a podcast where I actually cursed, and I try not to curse on the podcast. Is like you're just being a selfish little jerk when that
Yeah.
happens. You're only thinking about you and how it affects your life and how it possibly, and that these people who don't know you, who have nothing to owe you, you think you should just get everything from them by asking a question. And you're like, I reached out, I did my part. Who cares?
Yeah.
I can sit here and tell you I looked at my inbox yesterday. I had over 30 plus messages in one day because I check it every morning at 5 a.m. So to think you guys are the most important person sending a message, you're not. We have a lot. And guess what? Those are just people messaging me on LinkedIn, which again, I love you guys and I will get back to you. I get back to everybody. But guess what? You don't pay my bills. My job pays my bills. My deals are paying my bills, right? Like
Yeah.
like that's what you guys have to understand. And so again, it's what
So
you
true.
and it's just like the real
Yeah.
hard truth that you guys need to hear because I already hear it. And again, this is not a block on anyone, but like straight up to all you college kids, you guys are the laziest, man. Like the amount of people that literally, hey, bro, again, like again, I'm a nice guy and I'll respond back, but the amount of times you want to keep it professional, you're on LinkedIn. Hey, bro, what's up? Wanted to see if we can get you on a call. I'm trying to break into medical device sales. Do you know of any jobs? Dude, like I'm never gonna I don't want to get back to you because you just showed me that you're literally like the bottom of the lazy and you're
Yeah.
not
And
gonna do anything.
I think what you're saying too, like having that professional component to you, you know, because it does speak to a level of like your seriousness and your, but I mean, yeah, when there's like not that professional, like that laziness, like a lot of that, people can read that right away from a message or just a simple, like the first thing when you talk with someone.
Exactly. First interaction. And just so you guys know, like
Yeah.
I not on my messages, but just so you know, like to I'm a very nice guy and I keep it more relaxed on the phone. I'll say like, hey, what's up, man, and all that. Excuse me. But like what I just make sure that everybody knows is every time I got on a call, I called somebody sir or ma'am.
Yeah.
Until they told me and know what every time, dude, stop calling me sir, just call me John, whatever it is. Or don't call me ma'am. I feel old. Oh, sorry. I made them tell me not to. Because otherwise, I just came off the really respectful guy, and that's what too many people come in too relaxed, and then you're like, "Oh, what?" Because you gotta understand, you guys, when you guys are calling and reaching out to these people, we think of who do we speak of? Surgeons. You know who's not gonna be okay with you saying, "What's up, bro?" A dude who just went to school for 14 years
Yeah.
and is trying to save people, right? And like that's why you guys have to understand. And this, I'll just be straight up. So again, I hope this is really helpful. This is why I love working with people that are over the age of 26, 27, 28, because and again, this isn't a knock. We get plenty of college people hired, but I can sit here and tell you as personal experience where I was, and even people I've worked with in the past is when you're 23, 22, 21, 24, you're too emotional thinking and you don't think it really matters and you think the world's just about you and you got a degree and you paid 50 to $100,000 for a degree you don't even want to use and you don't know what to do with it and now somebody should help you because you have more worth and I'm like I literally have to say this, you have no worth. You have a degree that's literally worthless that you paid 100 grand that you don't even want to use and you don't know anything. But I'm not going to go take a job for $70,000 because I expect you're expecting is why you're not getting hired. Your
Yeah.
entitlement is why you're not getting hired. Your laziness is why you're not getting hired. And so I really hope that hits somebody because my 26, my 27, my 28 plus, I get people that are hired over 40 all the time. You want to know why? Because they have real life. They know how to be mature. They know how to have these real hard conversations. They can carry themselves. Guess what? They probably lost somebody in their life, or they've probably had something really hard in their life happen where they've had to bounce back and come back. And we know that you can do that in medical device sales compared to my 21-year-old who the hardest thing they've had to do is find beer money. Right. And that makes a big difference. And again, so I hope you guys are in college listening to that. Be like, dang, Jacob, that's not me. I'm the person who's going to go do. Great. I hope you're that person. But I'm telling you from experience, majority of people who are messaging me are the others. So how do you stand out? Don't be those people. Be respectful. Come with good questions. Be with saying sir and ma'am until they tell you not to. Make sure that you carry yourself in such a professional manner that they're like, my God, this kid is not messing around, or this person, because that's how you're going to stand out. And
Yeah.
then to Jen's point, you follow up, because guess what? You guys think I just say this for fun and all this. What do you think I do every single day in medical device sales? I never talk to a surgeon once. And even if they tell me I'm going to use your product, great. When can I do the surgery? Oh, let me know. I'll never see that surgeon again, and that's never getting done.
Yeah.
Right? Like I just told our group, I'm literally working on deals that I've followed up. They mandatory need some stuff. And I've sent 5 emails to these people and they still haven't responded. But guess what? They will need it and they have to have it. But if I just don't do anything, it doesn't look professional on mine. And then even, guess what? When they finally respond to me, I'm going to be really respectful and be like, hey, great to hear from you. Even though I've sent them 7 emails and I know they've read every single one.
Yeah.
Right. And the last thing I just want to leave with you with the follow up, just like to Jen's point, I've said this on the court or on the calls before, and I've said this on the podcast. When I got hired at Medtronic, I reached out to my manager 5 times on LinkedIn before they ever responded. It took 5 messages because I was talking to everybody around in the area, to all her reps, and it wasn't until I found her old associate rep that loved me and put in the good word for me that she finally responded.
Yeah.
So
That's
just
similar to me too. Yeah.
exactly, and to your
Yeah.
point, right? So
Yeah.
you guys who think you're just writing one message and it's getting the job done, like this again, this is where I just come back to lazy. Anybody can write one message. Anybody can do that. Anybody can send a message. Anybody can get on a call. But do you actually make, because again, let me bring it back. Because if you just shoot one message and you didn't get what you want and now you just gave up, shows that you didn't care about that person you were actually talking to. You're not actually trying to build a relationship and you're actually looking so short term instead of long term. Because why I tried to break in, I met so many people who still I keep in contact with who now can offer me jobs when I'm in, or they're asking me for jobs because we made a relationship, right? Like there's so much more. Some of the people that I've had on these podcasts I met during my networking time, and it's like we're still friends. We
Yeah.
hang out, and they've helped me so much, and I've helped them, and so that's what people just don't understand.
And I think too, like thinking in terms of like when you're sending that message, like you're building a relationship. So if you're ever trying to build a relationship with someone, you wouldn't just send one message and then just give up. It's that mentality of how do you build that relationship and keeping that as like the way to, interact with anyone that you're trying to you know, connect with on LinkedIn or even in person when you're at the hospitals with them.
Let's hammer it home because that was such a good point, and I said this in our coaching call, but I always say it, and it makes sense to everybody else. This is dating. It is dating. And when you're getting on a call and you're asking for jobs and you're doing all that, you know what you're just trying to do? That's the equivalent of you going to a bar, meeting a hot girl or guy and saying, let's do it. Someone might say yes. Majority are going to say no. And then even the one that said yes probably is not that good of an option. Probably not going to marry that person. And maybe you will. I'll get a message and be like, you piece of crap. I married my girl that I did that. Right. But whatever it is, right. Just understand this is dating, you guys. Guess what? The first time you talk to someone, that's a first date. That's just the first impression. And they want to know, guess what? You need a second and a third and a fourth and a fifth date. That's how guess what? Everyone's like, oh, Jacob, how'd you do it? It's because I talked to people more than once. I talked to them 5, 6, 8 times. And then, holy crap, I showed over and over and over that I was responsible. I showed over and over that I did what I was going to say. And I built trust with that person over a several
Yep.
month period. And now they were happy to put their stamp of approval on me to send me to somebody else, to the
And it
hiring
also,
manager.
yeah, and it also helps too, because I'm sure you and a lot of, people within the industry, they get a lot of messages.
Yeah.
So that also will help you stand out from the other people that may not, they just send that one message and they're like, oh, well, he or she, like they're sending me a follow-up, like they're really like invested, they're really trying. Like I think it definitely shows that building the relationship and helps you stand out even more so, it helps.
100%. That is the best. And Jen, again, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and spending time with us. I know you're super busy with your new position, um, but I just want to come and just say this so everybody can hear it. Like I know I've told you, but I'm so dang proud of you.
I
Like
appreciate that.
the person you've become, and I've got to watch. It's been like I said, it reminds me of why I started and you were the reason. It's like, it's people like you getting to watch you change your own personal life, see the self growth, not just getting into medical device sales, but the personal growth that you've done and who you've become in the last 2, 3, 4 months.
I'm a different person, and
Yeah,
honestly,
totally
like,
different.
I owe a lot to that to you, so I'm so thankful of everything you've helped me with and everything, but yeah, I've definitely grown, not just professionally, but, like, personally as well.
Yeah, you 100%
Awesome.
have. And again, this is just the beginning. And I know you're going to be so stinking successful. So again, I just want to tell you how proud I am of you.
Thanks, Jacob. Thanks so much for having me, I appreciate it.
Of course. And if you guys are watching, please press that like and subscribe button on the YouTube page. A 5-star review helps us grow this channel. And again, if you guys are really interested in breaking into medical device sales, number one, follow me on LinkedIn if you guys aren't, or connect with me because I just posted our 3-month reflection. I did my 6-month actually today. I try
Yeah.
to put stuff that's going to help you guys, not just here. So again, if you guys are listening to this, go follow me on LinkedIn because I love being able to help you guys. But also to the point I wanted to just touch on real quick is if you are serious about breaking into medical device sales, like Jen was, and she saw that the investment in herself has already paid 30x returns in the first 3 months, which we always say, which you can't go anywhere else in the world to get that. Our average student is breaking in 11 weeks at $91,000. Again, entry level to we're getting people. We just got several people hired as full line sales rep roles with no experience, clinical specialists, associates. And again, they're all coming in as over the average of, you'll see positions posted between 50 and 75K. And again, every time we're beating that. So again, if you guys are really interested, because it's not just about getting an interview. I say this all the time. I can get my dog an interview, but how are you beating other people out? How are you growing? How are you getting prepared for the industry? And also, we help with negotiations if you're going through that process. We make sure that you guys are ready. And so I just wanted to touch, if you guys are really serious, please reach out. The one thing I do want to say is I hear people say all the time is, oh, I can't afford it. First off, I want you guys to know we do payment plans. I'm willing to work with you guys. Again, you're talking to a guy who moved out here with $1,200 to his name and lived off $30 a week. Like, I will make sure I don't want money being the reason you hold it back, but I will just sit here and say the amount of people who look at it and they're again going back to that short-term mindset where they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I don't see this investment. Oh, it's this." But then I can sit here with a smile on my face and what I already related to into the podcast is you went and spent 50 to $100,000 on a degree that you didn't know what you wanted to do and now you're actually leaving it to come. You've decided medical device sales and now you have somebody who's helped over 700 people and we have a team and we can make sure to get you above the national average. We can make you getting 6 figures right away. And you guys think so short term and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can see it. We know that we're getting a 30x return in the first 3 months. We know
Yeah.
that in the first 11 weeks.
And it's really an investment in yourself,
Yeah.
like you would invest in your health. That's it definitely, I've seen the return and it's a good return on investment and definitely worth it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And that's what we just always just tell you guys. And so again, I want you, if you have questions, I'm more than happy to get on a quick Zoom call with you guys. So feel free to reach out Instagram or LinkedIn. But again, I just want you guys to know that we're willing to work with you. And the one thing I did just want to end because I know I'm going to have a lot of nurses watch this one is I've talked to so many nurses. And the thing I want you guys to realize, and even SLPs and everybody else, just because you guys are getting into the course doesn't mean you quit that day. The amount of people who are like, I don't know if I can make this
Mhm.
career change. I don't know if I can do this. Then they're so scared to make the jump. I say everybody thinks worst case scenario, but let me tell you real quick what's worst case scenario. You come in, you make more money, you have more freedom, and you decide that it's not for you. Because again, our average person is making 91K. Most nurses, SLPs right away aren't doing that. We just got several people placed over 6 figures. So worst case scenario, you come in and guess what? You can go back already because you're in need. You can already go back to where you were, but guess what? Now you're more marketable. You have sales experience. You've done stuff. That's worst case. And then again, you already have a job, so you don't need to rush.
Yeah.
Instead of being stressed and being like, "Oh my god, I need to do it." That's what we did with Jen. You didn't have to take a job. You were in the driver's seat, and it's why you're
Yep.
sitting here with a smile on your face because we made sure that it was the right opportunity that you felt like was the right choice for you,
100%.
and now you're living your best life.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point that you just made there.
I
Definitely.
appreciate I
Good
appreciate that. I hope that helps because again, that's the most common thing I'm hearing from nurses. So again, just because you're deciding to do this doesn't mean you're quitting that day. It
Yeah.
could take 4 months. We can pace it. Again, we're here to help with that. But I appreciate you guys. Again, follow me on LinkedIn if you're not, and we will see you on the next one. Peace.